So good morning, everybody. Welcome to this digital alumni series. And today's topic is going to be wind basics and overview of wind resource assessment. I would like Anuradha ma'am to give an introduction about our speakers today.
Very good morning, everyone. This is Dr. Anuradha, Professor and Head of Electrical Department, KCG College of Technology. Dear Ms. Shubha, Mr. Naveen and participant, I extend a very warm welcome to you all for this webinar on wind basics and overview of wind resource assessment. It's my pleasure to introduce our department alumni, Ms. Shubha Dev and Mr. Naveen Kumar. Ms. Shubha Dev has completed her BE in Electrical and Electronics Engineering in 2018 and placed as a wind site engineer at Vestas Technology R&D through campus recruitment. She's a very enterprising person. She took part and won many competitions during her college days. She was awarded the best ASDF student by the Association of Scientists, Developers and Faculties. She is also a volunteer in Tunai Foundation, a NGO which helps the needy in rural area. Her area of interest is renewable energy. Mr. Naveen has completed his BE in Electrical and Electronics Engineering in 2019 and he joined in Infosys through campus placement. After a year, he started his career in Vestas Technologies R&D as wind site engineer. Mr. Naveen is a very enthusiastic person and took part in both co-curricular and extracurricular activities during college days. He was recognized as Young Leader for the academic year 2018 and 19. His area of interest is sustainable energy. Today, they both are here to deliver a talk on wind basics and various wind resource assessment techniques. With this brief introduction, I hand over the session to Shubha and Naveen. Shubha and Naveen, over to you and you are on.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. I'll share my screen.
And guys, regarding the questions, you please post it in Q&A section. Whenever you feel the question to be asked, they'll answer you at the end, okay? And in the chat box, if you feel any other stuff, you put it there, okay? Don't post any other stuff in your Q&A section. Thank you.
So whether my screen is visible?
Yes, Naveen.
Once again, yeah.
Yes, it's visible, Naveen.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, good morning to one and all present here. And thanks for the opportunity given to us to present ourselves to our fellow juniors. And before entering into the topics that today we are going to discuss, first of all, I would like to say everybody is safe because we are in a pandemic and lockdown situation. I suggest you people kindly to maintain the social distancing and avoid gathering in the common place to get infected by the virus. And make use of this lockdown session to be productive and learn something new. So with this, I thank KCG College of Technology for giving this opportunity. We are getting into the digital alumni series. The topic that today we are going to discuss is wind basics and overview of wind resource assessment. So thanks for the good introduction, Anuradha ma'am. But before that, getting into the technical topic, we would like to introduce ourselves and the company, the organization that we are going to represent. So if you take Subha's profile, she got graduated, she entered in KCG College of Technology in the background of electrical and electronics engineering, and she got placed in Vestas, and now she successfully completed 2 years at Vestas, contributing herself for the sustainable energy solutions. And myself, as ma'am said, I joined as an engineering student in KCG College of Technology in 2015 and placed on campus in Infosys and then joined Vestas in 2019. And I'm completing 1 year at Vestas, successfully contributing towards the environment as well as the sustainable energy. So here are some of our hobbies. Like if you take my hobbies like badminton, travel and dancing, and Subha's hobbies are cooking, music and books. And yeah, here comes our happy place, Vestas. So before getting into the technical topics, let me give a short introduction about the organization that we work for. Vestas is a globally recognized renewable energy industry contributing for the sustainable energy solutions. On all over the world, we have 113 gigawatts of installed capacity of wind turbines, out of which 96 gigawatts of wind turbines are under service. If you can see from the statistics, Vestas all over the world has a 591 gigawatts of installed capacity, out of which Vestas has the 18% of the global wind installed base. This shows clearly we are clearly marching towards a long-term vision to be the global leader in the sustainable energy solutions. Our headquarters is placed in Harres, Denmark, and employee strength of more than 25,000. If you see the history of our company, it started a way long back in 1890s. We are the global leader for 110 years in the technology and innovation side. And the name Vestas born in the year 1945. 1945, the name Vestas has been introduced to the market, and we have been introducing a very innovative products right from the year. And the company itself dedicated towards the sustainable energy, particularly the wind energy, from the early 1970s. 1970s, the company started a project and innovation basis towards the wind industry, and they have installed successfully the first wind turbine in the late 1970s with I mean exactly 1979. From there, the journey starts. The company started with the small turbines of 40-meter rotor diameter. Now it ranges up to 160-meter rotor diameter, and it's a global leader. It clearly shows our motto: wind, it means the world to us. Vestas, Vestas has its sustainability strategy. We believe sustainability in everything we do. So here are the 4 sustainability concepts that I would like to go through. We are emerging for the carbon free organization by the 2030, as well as we are emerging towards the zero waste by 2040 by by reproducing the wind turbines waste. And when it comes to safety is our first priority, inclusion of all the social responsibility. The energy transition, to be the global leader in the sustainable energy solutions in the upcoming years. So with that brief introduction about our organization, I would like to hand over to Subha to take over the session on wind basics.
Thank you, Naveen, for the wonderful introduction. So here comes the first topic of the day, the wind basics. So wind is all around us. So sometimes it is always an elegant mood setter. Sometimes it is a early warning of a dangerous storm. So most of us here wouldn't have given a much thought about it unless it's life-threatening. So now here comes the question: where do wind comes from? So the simple answer to the question is that the air moves in response to the pressure differences between. Naveen, can we move on to the next slide?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So the simple answer to the question of where do wind comes from is due to the pressure differences between the different parts of the Earth's surface. An air mass tends to move towards a zone of low pressure away from a zone of higher pressure to equalize the difference. So the reason why the air pressure difference never completely disappear is because there is always uneven heating of the Earth's surface. So when the surface heats up, the air above it expands and it raises, and the pressure drops in that particular area. So when there is a surface cooling, the opposite process occurs and the pressure rises. So due to the differences in the amount of solar radiation received at different points, say point A and point B, in different globe of the Earth, in different regions of the Earth's surface, there is a variation in the surface temperature and the pressure are continually be created. And so there is a wind in somewhere on the planet. So while uneven heating is ultimately the wind's driving force, the Earth's rotation also plays a key role. So the Coriolis effect causes air moving towards the poles to veer to the east, while the air heading for the equators veer to the west. So it's basically influenced by the main factors. So there is always pressure differences, and the pressure does not directly move towards the zone of low pressure, but it always circulates around the lines of the constant pressure. So next we move towards the global climatology. So by far the most important temperature gradient driving global wind patterns is that there is a difference between the difference in between the equator and the poles. So combined with the Coriolis effect, it is always responsibility of the well-known equatorial trade winds and the mid-latitude westerlies. So most of us would have learned all these trade winds and westerlies in our social studies long back. Yeah. So just to have a refresh of all that. So the trade winds are the prevailing wind patterns in the easterly surface winds, which are found near the tropics and basically in the Earth's equator. So these winds blow predominantly from the northeast in the northern hemisphere and from the southeast in the southern hemisphere. So the next major concern is the westerlies. So westerlies are the prevailing winds in the middle latitudes. So these prevailing winds blow from west to the east. So to be more specific, they are from the southwest in the northern hemisphere and from the northwest in the southern hemisphere. So next, apart from the global climatology that we are talking about, we do have a lot of local considerations. So the first local considerations that we experience on an everyday basis, uh, yeah. So on an everyday basis are that the sea breeze and the land breeze. So depending upon depending upon in which region you may be in. So let's say most of us are here in Chennai, for instance. So on a sunny day in an afternoon, so the air above the land warms and it raises. So the cooler air in the oceans rushes into the ocean regions, filling the void. So it causes the air racing over land, and this causes the sea breeze. So the reverse process happens overnight since the ground cools faster than the water and the direction of the flow of air is reversed. So instead of the sea breeze, a land breeze develops. So as mentioned, the wind moves out from the land to the oceans. So few other local considerations are the obstacles, roughness, and the orography. So first, heading towards the obstacles. So when the terrain is the underlying surface of the atmosphere, and the height variations exerts a profound influence on the wind. Uh, Similarly, I was actually mentioning about the orography. So the terrain is the underlying surface, and it basically the difference height variation differences plays the influence in the wind. And talking about the obstacle will decrease the wind speed downwards from the obstacles. So basically, the slowdown effect of the wind from an obstacle increases the height and length of the obstacle. So next major influence is with the roughness. So the more the roughness of the Earth's surface, the more will the wind be slowed down. Say for example, as seen in the photographs below. So the forest and the large cities obviously slows the wind down considerably, while considering some smooth surface, say for example, airport. So the wind that is slowed down from the airport is little lesser when compared to the forest and the large cities. So water surfaces are even smoother when compared to the airport runways that I was discussing about. And it'll have a lesser influence on the wind while compared to the forest and the cities. So next we move on to the
Yeah.
major atmospheric variables. And yeah.
So here comes the major atmospheric variables in which we'll consider for the wind when we install for a wind park or a wind turbine has to be installed in the particular site. These are all the major constraints that has to be considered. These are all the basic definitions that I'll go through now. So first, here comes the pressure. As you all know, the force pressure is nothing but the force per unit area exerted by the weight by the column of air above the Earth's surface point. We know that pressure moves from the high pressure to the low pressure region. So the unit of the pressure is the Pascal or bar. And the next comes the temperature. the average kinetic energy of the atoms in the system, and the vibration of the molecules. So temperature plays a vital role in the wind turbine installation, because if you have the higher temperature, you might face the many losses due to the temperature. So the unit is Kelvin or degree Celsius. And the next is velocity. The velocity of an air parcel. Here in a wind atmospheric technology, will consider the velocity of an air parcel as a velocity. But on common, the velocity is nothing but the definition is nothing but the displacement by time. The unit is meter per second. And next comes the important topic, air density. So air density is nothing but the mass per unit volume of the Earth atmosphere. So each and every site have a different air density. So the power curve of the wind turbine will change according to the air density, because the air density plays a vital role in a power curve in terms as a higher improvement of increasing the AEP generation from the wind turbines, etc. So the unit of the air density is kilogram per meter cube, and the formula is rho is equal to P divided by R into T. And next, I'll go through some of the formulas in the wind industry. As many of you know, like kinetic energy of the air mass is nothing but half into mv square, and the R mass formula is M is equal to rho V, where V is rho into AVT. So therefore, the kinetic energy in the air mass, by replacing the air mass formula into the kinetic energy of the air mass, we get the formula of half into rho V cube AT. So the power can be obtained from the kinetic energy by dividing the energy by time. So the power formula is half into A rho V cube. Yeah. So let's have an overview of a wind turbine. So I'm not going digging into the most in-depth components of all the wind turbines because many would have learned during their course. But I'll say the overview of how the wind turbines looks. So wind turbine is nothing but it has a main three major components such as tower, nacelle, as well as the blades, etc. And if you can see that swept area is nothing but the rotor diameter. So if the rotor diameter is 162 meter, the swept area is accordingly measured. So the nacelle is the main part which it contains all the main components such as gearbox, generators, etc. And tower is the supporting structure of the wind turbines. So this is the overview of wind turbine overview. So next we'll go into the meteorological mast. Yeah, so here comes the important task of wind resource assessment. Till now we have seen the basics of wind. So now we are going to deal with the meteorological mast, how the mast has been measured, how it is installed, or how the site condition has been measured, etc. So first we have to this can also be said as the preliminary site assessment, because directly we can't go and install a turbine in a particular a site. So we have to know the wind condition at that particular site. So the mast commissioning team will identify the potential wind sites which has a higher wind speed, or this site has a higher wind speed at lower hub heights, etc. So they will do a lot many checks, and they will propose a boundary to the mast commissioning team as well as the installation guys. So they will go to the site, and they will see the roughness and orography, like how the plane and the terrain looks like, whether the site visit will be done, and whether the turbines can be installed in that particular area or not. So once everything is done, they will set up a mast in the particular area. So it is technically called as meteorological mast. We'll say it as mast. So mast is nothing but it's just a structural component in which it contains all the sensors. So all the climatic conditions that we are going to measure, like wind speed or wind direction or temperature, pressure, etc. So it will have all the sensors. So we will erect it. We can't go and install the mast in all the areas. If we are going to install the 50 turbines in the particular area, we can't go and install the 50 mast in that area. So we can have a 2 or 3 representative mast to the particular area, and have a overview of how the wind speed occurs, or the climate occurs on that particular area. So if you take the types of the mast, it consists of the two types, lattice mast as well as the tubular mast. So as per the industry standards, all the customers and all the industries, all the IPPs, OEMs, or will go for the lattice mast, because it is more reliable, it is easy to construct, and the guide wires can be attached to with easily. So the lattice mast consists of the various sensors, like it can all the sensors can be fixed in the correct boom orientation, so that the approximation and the accuracy will be too high when compared to the tubular mast. Tubular mast, when we are going for the lower hub heights, tubular mast will be preferred, but as far as the industry standards, everybody will go for the lattice mast. So what is the mast height is recommended? So the mast should have uh, greater than 3 by 4th of the hub height. So as everybody know, like if you have the measurement at the hub height, well and good. If you don't have the measurement at the hub height, the mast should at least have the nearby height, right? So that is why it is suggested to have a mast height more than 3 by 4th of the hub height. So if it is, if for example, if we take the turbine hub height is 120 meter, so the mast has to be installed at least for 80 meter. So next we'll go. So next is, what do we measure? So what do we measure from the mast? Once it is installed, what do we measure from the mast? So these are the measured parameters. We'll get the wind speed, wind direction, temperature, velocity, relative humidity, etc. So it depends, varies to customer and companies to company. What they want, they will measure it in the particular site. It can be taken up in the 1 to 3 second sampling, or 10-minute sampling, or Harley sampling. So derived parameters. So next comes the derived parameters. These are the derived parameters which we will derive from the measured parameters. So what is the measured parameter? So from the measured parameter, we'll derive wind shear, turbulence intensity, air density. So details, in-depth details of the wind shear and the turbulence intensity can be seen in the upcoming slides. So multiple measurement heights. It is recommended to always have a multiple measurement height. If the mast is 100 meter, it is recommended to have the measurement at 40 meter, 60 meter, and 80 meter. Only if we have more than one measurement height, we can use the shear method, or we can extrapolate the signal to the desired hub height. If the hub height is 150, and if you have the measurement height only at 80 meter, then we can't extrapolate the 80 meter signals to the 120 meter. We need at least two measurement height to extrapolate the signal. So multiple measurement heights, higher the accuracy will be in the hub height. We can reduce the uncertainty. So what is the measurement period? Like as per as the industry standards, 1 year measurement period is recommended to have all the seasonal variations. But if well and good, if you have 2 or 3 years, well and good, like higher the years, higher the accuracy. And next we'll go to the monitoring station instrumentation, which will be taken by Subha. Over to you, Subha.
Yes, Naveen. So, as we have seen about the MetMask, so as Naveen was talking about different sensors that could be installed in the MetMask. So I'll just take you through the different types of sensors. So first we go through the anemometer. So the anemometer is an instrument that is used to measure the wind speed. So there are various types of anemometers that are used in the standards. So the first type of anemometer is the cup anemometer. So the cup anemometer is connected to a vertical rotating shaft. So the wind causes the assembly to turn it to the preferred direction. A transducer in the anemometer converts this rotational movement into the electrical signals, which is then sent through a wire to the data logger. So the logger measures the frequency of these signals and it then converts it into the wind speeds. So this is the basics of how it all occurs. So the next type of anemometer that we're going to discuss is the propeller anemometer. This is also mounted on a horizontal shaft that is kept pointing into the wind by a trailing vane. Like a cup anemometer, Naveen, can we have the propeller? Yeah. So like a cup anemometer, the propeller anemometer also generates an electrical signals, which the electrical signals which are in frequencies and then converted to wind speeds. So the next type of anemometer that we are discussing is the ultrasonic anemometer. This will not have any moving parts. It just measures the wind speed and the direction by detecting the variation in the speed of ultrasonic sounds that is being transmitted between the fixed points. So when selecting a type of anemometer for our particular locations, there are different considerations that we will have to consider. So based upon the durability, operating cost, the environment conditions, and a lot of other factors could be involved for selecting which type of anemometer could be the best choice. Next, we go on to the measurement of wind direction. So the wind direction is measured using the instrument called as the wind vane. So wind vane is usually used to measure the wind direction, as I mentioned. In most of the familiar types, the horizontal tail connected to the vertical shaft, it also rotates to align with the wind. So to define the wind direction with adequate redundancy, so to be on sure on what we measure, it is always recommended to have one or two wind weights in the met mast. So next comes the air temperature and the barometric pressure instruments that are available in the met mast as well. So these two instruments are basically installed to derive the air density of the site. So air temperature is normally measured either 2 or 3 meters above the ground level, or sometimes even at the hub height level, it could be there. So next we move on to the data logger. So as we do have a lot of instruments that are being installed in the MetMask. So how the data are being collected? So here comes the answer to that. So data logger is an instrument that is used to store the data. So many manufacturers now offer a complete data logging system that includes the integrated data storage and as well as the data transfer options as well. So various data storage devices are available. So such as the memory cards, data cards, EEPROM data chips, and portable computers as well. So another major concern is the data transfer equipments. See, all the data loggers are store the data locally, and some transfer the data from one location to another through the cellular phones or radio frequency or even satellites. So remote data transfer allows the user to obtain and inspect the data without making frequent site visits, and also to verify the data logger is operating correctly or not. So the advancements in this data logger has also made the work in a very ease. So next we move on to the next topic of SODAR and LiDAR. So as the wind turbines are becoming large in size, and also the complexity of the projects are increasing day by day, so it is always necessary for a wind resource data. It should be higher, it should be exactly equal to the hub height or somewhere near to it. So when the turbine hub heights keep on increasing, these remote sensing devices are a best option as well. So these remote sensing with sodas and lidars are generally used in the wind resource for generally can we have the next picture? Yeah. So for generally estimating the wind speeds above the fixed meteorological mass. So this can reduce the uncertainty in the energy production estimates. And this can also have a spot check on the resource at multiple locations between the project area itself. So what is SODAR is the sonic detection and ranging, whereas the LiDAR is the light detection and ranging. So SODAR is an instrument that measure the wind condition by means of emitting acoustic pulses. So, and the LiDAR instruments are basically the laser pulses, and which could be either pulsed, or it can also be a continuous wave to measure the wind characteristics. So, we're not going much of a detail with the SODAR and LiDAR. This is majorly used in sites for verification of the met mast as well. So we move on to the next topic of the
Yeah.
data analysis and resource assessment. This is one
So
of the first key parameter that we'll be dealing with. And yeah, Naveen, take over.
yeah, data analysis and resource assessment is very important topic because this is the work that we really do as a siting engineers. So once the MetMast has been installed and the data has been measured for a 2 years or 3 years or even a 1 year, so we will have a data either in a raw format or in a processed format. So before getting into the details of data analysis and the resource assessment, I would just like to say what are we doing. So as engineers, we are the pre-sales engineers in which, so if the site is identified, the MAST team or the project development team will go to the site, and then they will install the MedMAST, and they have a data reading. And we will have the data with us, and we will assess the data analysis and the resource assessment, and we will give the results to the consultants or the customers or the developers. This much is the generation that we can expect from the site by using this turbine. If you are using this variant of turbine, we will get this much of generation, much of loss. So these are all the things that we do as a wind and site engineers. I'm not getting in much deep depth of what we are doing, but basically, like, before the project, the work that we do is before the project gets signed. So after we give the results, it will be confirmed whether the project is getting signed or not. So this is the data analysis in the resource assessment tab. Once we get the data in a raw format, it will be in a different. There are different companies like NRG or Nomad. So we will get the data in a raw .rwd format or .rld format or Nomad format, etc. So we have to process the data. First, we have to convert the data from the raw format to the processed data. Sometimes we will get the data in the processed format like text files or the CSV files, Excel sheets, etc. If we get in that format, well and good. We can directly import it into the software and do the data validation. So for doing the data validation, so there are many softwares available, like common softwares outside. Different companies use their own softwares, but there are common softwares available in outside. Like I would like to mention, there are softwares that has been used for data analysis in the resource assessment is WinPro, Windographer, OpenWind, and WindFarmer, etc. So what we do in the data validation part, it is a generally like we'll do the general system checks whether the data has been validated correctly or not, like it has been, whether correct slope and an offset is applied to the data or not, whether correct GMT and local time constraints has been applied to the particular data or not. So if not, we will just check those things and we'll apply and correct those things, and then we'll go to the measured parameters checks. So then we'll check the range test. So the particular site will have this much of range to be maintained. So we'll just check the range test, whether the data is coming within that range. And we will do the trend test. Trend test is nothing but if you have the sensors at the different hub heights, for example, 40, 80, or 100 meters. So the trend should follow, right? The wind speed at the 40-meter sensor should be less. And then accordingly, like 80-meter sensor will be higher and the 100-meter sensor will be much more higher. So we'll do the trend shift. Tower shading is nothing but if the sensor is placed in the same hub height. So due to one sensor, the wind can come in either of the direction. So due to, if it is placed in the same height, due to one sensor, if the wind is coming at 180-degree meter, due to that sensor, another sensor will have a wake affected, and we don't have the correct data. So we will check the tower shadow check also, and we also do the icing check. And after doing the data validation part, we will go and do the treatment of the suspected data. If you find any suspicious malfunctions of the sensors, we'll just go and disable the points, or we will just apply any slope and offset or correct the data. So all the treatments of the data has been done in the suspected part. So once after the data is ready, we will extrapolate to the desired hub height, and we will have the wind speed at the hub height that we are going to, turbines that we are going to install. And then we will do the long-term correction. So all these third-party softwares like WindPro have the long-term data, like we'll call it as the meso data. So this data, like many third-party sources have the MERA and ERA data, like for 20 years. So the year that we are measuring for particularly 2 years or 3 years, it might be a high wind year or a low wind year. So it's always recommended to have a long-term corrected data, in which what it is actually happening is the measured data will be corrected according to the long-term data. The long-term data will be of 20 years or 18 years. It varies to data sources. So once the long-term is done, now we are ready with the exact, like 90%, we can say like 95% accurate wind speed that we can expect at the particular height. This is the overview of data analysis and the resource assessment part. And next, I'm getting into the characterizing, what are the characteristics we are observed in the wind resource. So we are observing an average wind speed, variation in the wind speed, and most frequent wind directions, like from which direction the wind is coming, and frequency of the other wind directions, and the probability distribution. So the report products, like finally after completing the data validation and the data correction, and after doing the LTC, what are all the report products that we are getting from the data? We are getting the data recovery fraction. So from the raw data or the process data, how much data we are recovering after disabling the samples. And we are getting the mean wind speed at the hub height, wind shear, and turbulence intensity, mean hair density, frequency distribution, Weibull A and K parameters, wind rows, daily and hourly speed distributions. So all these report products will be discussed in the upcoming slides in detail. And this is the picture of the data samples, how we analyze the data. Like this picture has been taken from the WinPro. So many different softwares have the different patterns, like different way of softwares are there to handle the data. And yeah, I said right, windrows is nothing but the polar plot at which the frequency which it is occurring in a particular direction. So I have taken this from one of the projects. So it is as you can see from this windrows, the predominant wind direction is coming from west southwest. So we can like install the turbines accordingly. Turbine spacings can be adjusted accordingly to reduce the wake loss. And here comes the Weibull parameters. Weibull parameter is nothing but it is a correlation of like frequency probability distribution in according to the wind speed. So what is, we have the two main parameters in the Weibull parameters, like A and K factor. So A is nothing but it's a scale parameter which is closely related to the mean wind speed, and K is nothing but the shape factor. It defines the shape of the probability distribution that occurs within the particular wind speed bins. So if you take to have a K factor, will as an industrial norms, it is advised to have a 1.6 to 2.4 of a K factor. And these things will be taken by Subha. Over to you.
Yes, Naveen. So here we are looking at a typical wind turbine power curve. So it is, as you can see, it is broken down into three different regions. So the first region is typically the region below the cut-in wind speed, where the turbine is not producing any power. So the region 2, the turbine ramps up from 0 to what is called as the rated power capacity. So in this occurs at the rated wind speed. So the region 3 is where there is a constant safe power that can produce that safe power that can be produced by the turbine by pitching effect of the blades and all. So there is no much of a value to go below the cut-in wind speed, as there is a very little power in the wind turbines to actually make it rotate. And above the cutout wind speed, there is definitely tremendous wind available, but the cost to make the turbines that is capable to withstand in such a windy conditions outweighs the advantages. So mostly there will not be much of a turbine that is been developed, I mean, designed for such cases. So we move on to the next shear. So wind shear is the rate of change in the horizontal. Wind shear is the rate of change in the horizontal wind speed with height. So it is typically expressed as a dimensionless power law exponent known as the alpha. So as you can see in the formula, the alpha is called as the wind shear. So the power law equation here relates the wind speed at two different heights. Say, for example, in this case, it is Z1 and Z2. So the shear value usually ranges from 0.10 to more than 0.40, depending on the site condition. It is even lesser or even higher in some cases as well. So next we move on to the turbulence intensity. So the wind turbulence is defined as the rapid fluctuation in the wind speed and direction, and it can have a significant impact on the wind turbine performance and loading. So the TI generally decreases with the increasing wind speed up above, say, for example, in 7 to 10 meter per second, above which it is assumed to be relatively constant. So basically in the industry standard, it is the TA measured at the 15 meter per second bin. It is always taken as a standard reference parameter for determining if the particular turbine model is suitable for a particular site or not. So the TI is always as defined as the ratio of the standard deviation of the wind speed by the mean wind speed at the for the recording interval. Next, we move on to the flow modeling. So this is a very interesting topic of the wind resource assessment. So it is generally not practical to measure wind conditions at every point of the wind turbine locations that we are going to put the turbines in, and on the and the exact hub height, and the measurements in such cases are impossible. So therefore it is essential to deduce the wind conditions from one known location. So here the known locations that I refer to is the met mass known location, and to the other unknown location where the future wind turbines could be installed at. And therefore we need a vertical extrapolation to just extrapolate the parameters. And for that purpose, wind flow modeling is used to estimate the wind resource and for the particular wind turbines in that location. So there are a wide variety of methodology that is being used. So the first methodology and the very popularly used is the Wind Atlas Analysis and Application Program, the commonly called as the WASP methodology. So it is referred to as the European Wind Atlas method. So WASP is a very successful methodology used in the industry for this purpose. Some renowned softwares, even like WinPro, WinFarmer, use the WASP results directly. So the other methodology that we use for the wind flow modeling is the CFD. CFD is nothing but the computational fluid dynamics, and it has its own discipline. So all CFD models are essentially the RANS equation solver. So basically, RANS is the Reynolds average Navier-Stokes equations. So basically, the CFD is the RANS equation solvers. So those heavy CFD models are especially good at simulating wind load conditions, say for example, if for complex sites where the turbulence intensity, inflows, and wind shear and unpredictable wind directions are available. So next we move on to the wind park production estimates. So the wind industry requires a correct estimation of how much energy a particular potential site can produce. Say, for example, for 20 years or even for 30 years period of time. So there are again a number of softwares that is done, as I mentioned, the WASP, WinPro, WinFarmer, and so many. So basically, the two parameters that is being highlighted here under the annual energy production are that the gross annual energy production is the annual output of the wind park without including the wake and the other losses. So I'll come into the losses part in a very short while. So the net AEP is the gross AEP minus the production losses. So next is the one of the very interesting topics is the uncertainty. So we often quote uncertainty as the standard deviation about the mean. So we are generally more interested in the uncertainty because we typically do not know the true value, and an unknown error is a source of uncertainty. So there is always a margin of doubt in every stage of the wind resource analysis, straight starting from the wind measurements that we do to the AEP prediction. So there is always a kind of an uncertainty, so that always should be taken into account. Next comes the losses. So wind turbines definitely has a lot of losses. So one of the major losses that we will discuss are the few mentioned here. And first I'll go through the wake losses. So the wind turbine extracts, as we know, it extracts kinetic energy from the wind to generate the electricity. So as a result, the kinetic energy in the wind speed after passing through the wind turbine, so the first wind turbine is there, and after passing through the first turbine, there must be some change in the wind speed and in the turbulence to the that is available after it, right? So basically there is a turbine, the wind affects the first turbine, and there will be some changes that is occurring to the next turbine that is placed just behind it. So that is and that loss is called as the wake loss. So this is one of the most significant source of production loss in the wind power plants. So wind turbines layout is optimized essentially to have a minimal wake losses. So next is the availability losses. So availability is the probability that a wind turbine or a wind power plant will operate without failure. That is, it will operate within the specified performance limit at any point of time. So the next loss that we'll discuss is about the environmental losses. So losses due to the aggregated effects of the environment, say for example, the degradation of the power performance and shutting down due to icing of blades in ice forming countries, and the dirts and paint sheddings of any of the turbines. So all these comes under these environmental losses. Even the lightning effects, all of them comes under this environmental losses. Next is the electrical losses. So electrical losses in the wind power plant originate from the three major sections. So one, there could be from the wind turbine system, and two, there could be due to the transmission cables, and three, there could be from the substation system itself. So the electrical losses inside a wind turbine generator varies with different configurations, such as the different types of generators used, converters used. So these and all are few of the parameters that is dependent for these electrical losses. So next is the curtailment losses. So curtailment occurs when the turbines have to be shut down or even had to be downrated. So for due to the and it could be one, it could be due to the environmental reasons, like the noise restrictions or reducing the shadow flickers and avoiding birds and bad curtailment. We'll talk more about the bad curtailment in the next slides. So even the wind sector management, that is it is one form of the curtailment strategies, that it will reduce the power production, that it is required to limit the wear and tear that is caused by the high turbulence and inflow angles in certain wind directions as well. So maybe we'll move on to the next slide.
Yeah, here comes the more important topic, micrositing. So in certain situations that customer or developers will provide the turbines coordinates where it has to be installed. In some cases, we'll just get a boundary and we will be asked to plot the turbines by considering the following scenarios. Like how, let me go through like what are the constraints that we will take into account when we are micrositing the turbine locations. So we will just first see the park efficiency, like how much we will plot the turbines where the efficiency is very higher, where the generations can be very higher. If you can see from the picture, it is a semi-complex site, and you can see the red areas where the wind speed is really high. So that we can, if we plot the turbines in that particular area by maintaining the distance, approximate distance that has to be maintained, and then the generation will be very good there. Even if you place the turbines in the blue areas or the green areas, the generation might be very less. So another site specific wind conditions that we will condition, like annual mean wind speed, wind rows, so from which direction the wind is coming, turbulence intensity, and accordingly based on the side wind conditions we will select the turbine. So certain turbines will be designed to the particular limit, like this turbines can withstand only till 7.5 meter per second. This turbine can withstand up to the extreme wind speed conditions of 40 meter per second. So we can't put the turbines which is designed for a lesser values. So we will first study the site conditions, and then accordingly we'll select the wind turbines, so that we can have a more capacity factor, more higher generation with less reduced losses. This is the important topic. And then standards that has been followed in wind industry. So the international standard published, IEC is nothing but the international standard published by the International Electrotechnical Commission for wind turbines. Here I would like to highlight some of the standards that is followed in the wind turbines. Like wind turbine classes, there are three types of classes, and three types of classes A, B, C. So if you take the V average is nothing but the annual mean wind speed at the hub height. So V reference is nothing but the 50 meter extreme wind speed for 10 minute samples. So V50 is nothing but the extreme gust wind speed for 3 seconds. IREF is nothing but the representative turbulence intensity. So based on this IEC standards, the turbines will be classified and it will be designed. And based on the site conditions, if the site falls under, like if I can say the example, like if the site has the extreme wind speed of 55.5 for extreme wind speed 3-second samples, then we have to go for the class 2 turbines. So these are all the turbines categories which are placed like higher, medium, and the lower turbulence intensities. And here comes the major environmental impact assessments. Nowadays, the mature markets like European countries are very keen on that. Like they are very much concentrating towards the environmental impact assessments. So what do we do? Like biological impact. So for example, if I say like if a country is like a Sweden or something, like birds or bats might migrate in the particular season, so we have to apply some curtailments to avoid the damage to the environment. So by it should not affect them. So we will apply the curtailments to assess the biological impacts. And the shadow flicker, there will be the request from the customer that the shadow should not fall on the nearby buildings or the nearby villages that is uh, uh, present. Like for example, I can say that if it is a hybrid plant, near to the wind turbines, there will be a solar plant also will be installed. So due to the shadow, if this shadow falls under the falls in the solar panel, so it doesn't have the energy, right? It doesn't get the sunlight and it cannot produce the energy. So there we will do the shadow flickering assessment. Then noise impacts. So we will get the noise restriction points, like noise emitting points. Like we should maintain this much decibel value to it should not cross this decibel value in this particular area. So we will do the noise assessment also. Yeah, these are some of the pictures that represents the environmental impact assessment. And then we'll go to the offshore wind turbines. So we are not getting much in depth of offshore wind turbines, but this is a very interesting topic. Like future nowadays a future is going towards offshore wind turbines. Like many organizations and the many developers doesn't want to waste the resource that is available naturally. So if you go for the onshore wind turbines, the turbines nowadays they're designing for more than 8 megawatt, 9 megawatt, 12 megawatt wind turbines are nowadays coming up. So the future of the wind is doesn't depends on onshore anymore. Like it is based on like both onshore and offshore wind turbines. And if you take countries like Vietnam, that they are going for intertidal wind turbines. So you can those are all the upcoming projects that they are focusing on. And the matured market like Germany, England have already started to implement this offshore wind turbines projects. And then yeah, so next everybody will have a question, what is the career in wind? So career in wind is not only for the electrical engineers. Like there are many departments in the wind industry. Like you can be the grid engineers, you can be the CAD designer, mechanical students can be the CAD designers, aeronautical students can be the airfoil designers. And the job that we do, wind resource assessment, is a common for all. It's a combination of electrical, aeronautical, and the mechanical part. So each and every department of the engineering subjects is associated with the wind industry. So no matter what background you people are from, you can definitely, if you are well passionate in the sustainable energy or towards the renewable energy, whether you have decided that you have to continue a career in the wind and like renewable industry, well and good, you can prepare yourself ready for it. So if you take the wind industry, like everybody has a narrow headed that like there are only a limited number of companies that they can join, and they don't have a very good future on it. But it is not the case. Like if you take the wind industry, there are several departments are there. Like if you take the original equipment manufacturers, they are the OEMs. Like the global leaders are Vestas, Siemens Gamesa, GE, Goldwind, Enercon, Suzlon, etc. So and if you take the independent power producers, they are the power producer, they are the owner of the projects like Tata Power, Adani. I'm just taking the few examples from India, but there are lots many companies in a wind, especially in wind industry, to have a career with. And third party consultant, what is then you people might have a question, what is third party consultants? Third party consultants is nothing but independent power producers doesn't believe on OEMs, right? Well, the OEMs intentions will be to sell their turbines. So to sell their turbines, they might also give the higher production or the higher generation values. So they just want to independent power producers to just confirm that the generation that we are getting from the OEMs is correct or not. So they will ask third party consultants to assess the same project, and then they will cross check with it. So you can also have the third party consultants carrying in a third party consultants. The companies like UL in India is a very good consultant. And then the certification bodies. Certification bodies are if we are going for any design certifications, then it has to be certified by authorized certified bodies like DNVGL. So you can also have a career in the certification bodies. So if, and I would suggest, like, if you want to have a career in these kind of renewable industries, to start in the third year itself, and then have a portal, have your own portal in the career websites of all the companies. So next next slide will be taken by Subha. Like, over to you.
Yes, Naveen. To make oneself industry ready, so maybe this is very specific to the students of final years or third years or even second years who are interested. So first, your resume is your first opportunity to make a good impression with the hiring manager. So craft your own resume, perfect resume, and tailor made it to each and every company that you apply. So maybe the template could be there, but always make sure that you tailor made with small changes so that you would be the best on it. So yeah, so back to the roots here I refer to as the most of the interviewers will definitely not ask you anything in depth about machines or whatever you're learning. It is just going to be all the basics, say for example the old what is voltage, current, Ohm's law. And these are definitely the questions that I was asked when I was hired in to the various interviews that I attended. So next is pick your own favorite engineering subject. It could be any subject, or it just could be even one topic. So you just have a topic or a subject and be specialized in it, so that when you're asked, being posted on any question with regards to that, then you will be able to answer. So next is the aptitude test preparation, and next is your communication skills. So these two are definitely, it cannot happen overnight. So these definitely actually needs a lot of practice over a lot of months. Maybe definitely our college does a lot of stuff starting from third year itself. So basically when you just take all of them seriously to be industry ready. So next are the yeah definitely do a background research. So research the company that you're going for, thoroughly review their website and understand where the company fits in the industry or the market sector. So whatever industry that you may go in, be it IT or renewable energy or whatever may be it, so always have a good background research. When you walk into the interview, you should know everything about the company. So build a portfolio and showcase your skills. So thoroughly review on the resume that you are presenting to your interviewer, and include everything that is possible, include all of them that actually showcases your talent. And always have update yourself. So updating oneself can never end. So always keep on trying to be on track of what's happening around the industry or whichever industry that you are interested in. So and next is the online courses. So online courses are one of the excellent methods in which there are a lot of free online courses, in fact. So just keep on updating yourselves, just in addition to whatever in-plan trainings that we go in all of the years, and also concentrate on the online courses. Maybe we do have a lot of good websites that offers even at free of cost. So maybe these are some of the examples, these are some of the points that maybe me, Naveen, or tried out, had a lot of trial and error during our final years. And definitely guys, just try it out. And next is networking, and
So
networking Naveen can definitely speak more on it.
So networking is nothing but, like, to make a good network in a professional manner. So first thing is like referrals. So before asking for a referrals, you should have a good connect with the particular person, like how I had with Subha. So it should not be like you just go and ask for a referral. You should have a connection with them, and then you should have a technical discussions with them, and then so these are all the things that might tempt your seniors to refer you for any core companies. Like if you take into any IT companies, like they do the bulk recruitments. So the core companies usually they go for off campus because they are not taking in bulk. They just to take a 2 or 5 in a particular department. So have a good referrals or a good network within your seniors or your industry people or your relatives, etc., whomsoever is associated to the particular industry. And then next comes the mentors. Choose a best mentors. You should be having a good mentors for your life, maybe from school staffs or college staffs, your relatives, anybody. So I really I had a very good mentors from my college, like very good faculties who are there to support me always and give me suggestions like you can do in this way, you can develop yourself in this way. So have a good mentors to discuss your like not only your success, also your failures. So failures can reach you multiple failures can reach you a success one day. And then exchange of fresh ideas. Have a fresh ideas always. Like if you have any ideas, you cannot be the developer all the time, but you might be the idea generator. So if you have any fresh ideas, have a good exchange with the people, those who are really good into developing stuff, so that the product can be developed. And then expression of opinions. So wherever we have to say no, we have to say no. Like opinions, if you have any opinions, you have to say. If you just keep quiet, nobody is going to get benefited, whether you or the receiving end person. So express your opinions whenever it is required. And then finally, have a good profile on a professional bodies like LinkedIn. So LinkedIn nowadays is ramping up. It is creating a lot more opportunity for the youngsters as well as the experienced professionals. Have a good profile, a decent profile, and build a strong profile in the LinkedIn, as well as other softwares like many job searching apps are there. Like you can have a good profile on that. So this is all about the networking that I would like to share. And then yes, maybe before winding up, like I can share you a video. Is my screen visible?
Yes,
Yes,
Naveen,
yes,
it's
Naveen.
visible.
Is
Yeah.
it audible?
Yes,
Yes,
yes, yes.
yes,
Great,
the
great.
video is also
Okay.
on.
Okay, thank you. So wait, it's just a 2-minute of video. We'll play it.
India is growing at a pace that is faster than any other country on the planet. With rapid growth comes ever-growing energy needs. By the year 2040, India is set to contribute more than any other country to the projected rise in global energy demand. The only way to sustain this is to step up its deployment of renewables, for which India is set to become the second largest market. The wind industry has witnessed record growth in recent years, which not only helps the world to meet the climate goals agreed in Paris, but also generates much-needed new jobs and boosts local economies. Wind is getting bigger, better, and more economical. Vestas is the world's largest and most experienced global wind energy company.
Over the last 3 decades,
We are the only company in the wind energy sector that focuses 100% only on wind energy. Vestas has not just been a thought leader in bringing new and innovative technology to the wind space, but also plays a major role in creating awareness about climate change. On 10th November 2015, Group President and CEO of Vestas, Mr. Anders Erik Runevad and team, met the Honorable Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi, and made 3 major proposals to show their full commitment to India. consider our work in India has just begun.
So thank you for this wonderful opportunity. Maybe Subha can take over for
Yeah,
giving vote of thanks.
vote of thanks. Okay.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, I really thank the management for giving us this opportunity, maybe at a very young stage of the career. So I thank Devasundari ma'am, Anuradha ma'am for actually organizing and hosting this, and along with Femina ma'am, who was there as a support as always. And thank you all. So if there is any more queries, you can reach out to the email ID mentioned here, so that we will definitely revert back to you whenever if you have any queries. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for the presentation, guys, and thanks for the pep talk at the end too. Okay, you can post your questions in the Q&A section. I suppose there are 3 questions and 2 have been answered. I'll read the questions. First is, how does air pressure difference occurs? Tuba, you can answer here also.
Yes, so the air pressure differences are basically, as I explained, it's due to the uneven heating of the Earth's surface. So, say for example, Naveen, if we can go to the first WIN basic slides.
Guys, in the meantime, post your questions in Q&A section.
Yeah.
To the one more previous one. Yeah. So basically the sunlight that is received in the point A is definitely not equivalent to what it is received in point B. So it is definitely, there is an uneven heating of the surface. So due to the uneven heating, there will be definitely pressure differences, and that causes it. Who was asked, Arvind, Arsh.
Okay, fine. The second question is, what should be the rotor diameter and the number of blades for a small wind turbine of roughly 1 kilowatt?
So just to answer on this, most of them, the number of blades are usually 3. That is what we usually generally it has been there. So basically why it is because of the high rotational speed and the minimum stress that is there. So I guess those are some of the reasons why it is only 3. And further on the rotor diameter, it majorly depends on the requirement of the site conditions and as well as the customer requirements as well. So for example, so a rotor diameter could be 100 meters and the power of around 2 megawatt. So Naveen, if you have anything more to add on to this?
No, nothing from my side.
Okay.
Okay, the next question is, how to measure tip speed ratio practically? This one, Karthikeyan sir.
I have no idea on the tip speed ratio, sir. Maybe it is
Maybe
just
we can check and
yeah, we'll check and definitely tell you. But the tip speed ratios, as far as I know, it is just the ratio that has been formulated, if I'm not wrong. I don't think there is any practical way of measuring. It is just the angle or something divided by the wind speed. But I'm not sure, sir. We'll definitely check and let you know.
Okay, so the next question is from Suraj. Which is the most preferred format for data processing, like TXT, Excel, CSV, or something like that?
anything is fine.
Anything, yeah. Yes, Naveen, if you can.
Yeah, you can continue.
Yeah, anything is fine. So we do, there is no preferred formats. The softwares that we use, say, for example, as we kept on mentioning about WinPro, WinFarmer, and all the OEMs have their own softwares. So those all except the Win data that has been processed in TXT formats, Excel formats, .dat formats, anything is fine. So there is no much of a restriction to that.
Yeah, so I have some few questions, guys. Okay.
Yeah.
So the first thing is that you said like there are different parameters that plays a major role for installing a wind turbine, like air density, pressure, wind velocity, etc. How does temperature plays a major role here? In what way temperature has a role here?
So pressure. It is
No, ma'am. Pressure, air density, and wind velocity I can understand, but they have also mentioned about the temperature. I just wanted to know in what way the temperature is going to play a major role here.
I think Shubha can answer.
Yes. So basically, why we record temperature is due to for calculating the air density, sir. So definitely, we all know the air for air density definitely plays a major role in this. So temperature, in turn, the air density it plays a major role. So for calculating the air density, the temperature is required, right?
Okay. And next
So
is
that is how.
which meteorological mass is used in common? You have explained about two, right?
Lattice.
Yeah,
Lattice.
yeah.
Lattice. Can you tell me why?
So basically, why is as Naveen also explained. Maybe I'll tell the points that Naveen missed out. So lattice mass, as you can see, maybe if we can go to the picture, Naveen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the lattice mast, as you can see, the lattice mast is the one that is available in the right topmost corner, which has the tubular one is the one that you can see, and the one that is above it is the lattice. So lattice mast, there will be less tower shadow that is falling on the sensor. So basically, what I mean to say is, so when there is a tubular mast, it is a solid structure, right? So when the air passes through a solid structure, there will be some kind of a fluctuations in air that actually falls on the anemometers. So in the case of lattice mass, it is just the tubes that has been connected, right? So it is not a solid structure. So there will not be much of a air deflections that actually falls on these sensors. So that is one of the major advantage. Naveen, do you have any other more?
No, like I've said, like what I've know, like
Yeah.
discussed.
So if you can
Fine.
mention them, yeah.
And you also said like you receive a raw data, right, for processing and then for validation.
Yes.
During processing, do you use any statistical measures?
Statistical measures as in, sir?
Like your mean, median, mode, standard deviation, all these stuff normally used to do for processing the data for machine learning stuff actually. So for prediction and all.
So actually, we will get those mean, median, maximum, minimum, standard deviation values along with the measured parameters.
Okay, so you don't process anything after
So
you
no,
receive it.
no, we will just
Fine.
convert the raw data into the processed format, and then we will use it for the data
And do
analysis.
you do any prediction actually with an
So no,
algorithm or something like that?
so basically with the, if I'm not wrong, with the wind data that we received, it is basically, Naveen, if you go to the time series plot
Okay.
that is there in the characterizing the observe wind resource
Yeah.
after the wind, yeah. So if I've got your question rightly, so you're talking about the wind data that we have received and the parameters in which we actually use to maybe how to mention the treat the suspected data, right? You're asking about the methodology that we use, or
Yes.
okay, it basically we don't have any kind of a methodology. So we receive the data and we check if if the data is all fine. So as Naveen mentioned, we actually see if the anemometers has any malfunctions due to icing, or say for a very simple example. So there will be one anemometer and then a crow comes and touches the anemometer and some damage happens to the anemometer, and the anemometer goes flat, and that
Okay.
is definitely not a valid sample, right? So maybe the
Okay.
anemometer will measure that flat for around say 1 or 2 days till the people come to the site visit and then replace the anemometer. So that sample is definitely not a valid sample. So what we do is we clean those samples. So we remove all these samples. We do have a set of say measurements, kind of set of rules that we'll have to see on these data. So one such example that I told is with regards to the crow, or it could be due to icing, or there are a lot of parameters. So
Okay. Fine. Thank you, guys.
It's basically
And,
fault detection, Gautam. They are not doing prediction algorithm. They do the
Okay,
fault.
ma'am.
Fault
yes,
detection. Yeah.
initially this is the initial phase, ma'am. We also predict. This is the base of our wind resource assessment. So this data is all that we use to predict the energy in a particular location on a particular site.
What Gautam was asking is about prediction
The date.
algorithm. Like
Okay.
next month, how much, because it's
No,
also
no.
natural, nature involved. I don't think they do that prediction algorithm,
No.
Gautam. But they do fault analysis.
Okay.
No,
If
we
any
don't go to
sensor
the
goes,
yeah.
if any sensor goes fault and the data is coming wrong, then that is predicted with their data. So they keep analyzing the data continuously, but it is for fault analysis. Am I right,
Okay.
Shima?
Yes, I think he's asked more about the artificial intelligence and stuff like that. I don't think
That's
we
what
do.
I
Yeah, I
understood
know.
his research.
Maybe, yeah, I don't.
Yeah, even I can
And
see this sir has completed data analytics course from
Yeah.
Great Lakes. Yeah.
Just I
Naveen,
have one question.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
yes or
Uh,
no?
I have one question. Is there any opportunity for the internship for our students, Shubha, investors? If it is
Um,
there, what is the procedure? How to apply?
So, yes, ma'am. So basically, one first point is internships are posted in vestuscareer.com. So that
Okay.
is the first case. So second, as I was mentioning, it is through referrals. So as one, Naveen was also one of the interns when he joined. So it was basically maybe most of the industry here um, post limited on the career website. So it's basically through referrals in which you can get through. And three, you can also they also post in LinkedIn's, ma'am. So if we
Okay.
have a regular check on LinkedIn's, it's really grateful.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much, Shubha.
Yeah, thank
Even
you,
if
ma'am.
there is any vacancy, we can let you guys know. Like,
Yeah.
In fact, I was about to start that, Naveen. See, 2018 was Shubha and 19 was you. So we are expecting somebody to get into Vestas in 2020 also,
I think they have we have created a good name for KCG. They might
I know.
take some students from our
I
college.
think
So
Naveen
take your juniors for interns also,
Yeah,
so that
sure.
they get benefited, And it's
Yeah.
very happy to see both of you, exact 1 year.
Yeah.
2019 May, you graduated from KCG, and exact 2020 May to see with so much of confidence. It's
Yeah, and it was
really,
so emotional when I
I
left the
know.
last day in college.
Exactly, it was in May. So, I was
Yeah,
just remembered of that. And Shubha, exact 2 years, but in two
yeah.
years and in 1 year, the confidence and the, what you are now, you have made us so proud. Thank you
Thank
so
you,
thank
much.
you
ma'am.
so much.
Thank
And
you.
the webinar ended with, very Naveen's touch, that video, right?
And
But he was very
Naveen is
stubborn that
always a brand ambassador,
yeah.
Brand ambassador.
Even
Naveen
today,
was
he's a brand ambassador for KCG. And now
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's for Vestas also.
Uh,
yeah,
that is very spicy, and it's very, very vibrant for our webinar. So thank you,
yeah,
Naveen, for
yeah.
posting.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much, like
Uh,
for management department for giving us this wonderful opportunity, especially Dean Ma'am Devasundari as well as HOD and Anuradha Ma'am as well as the coordinator Femina Ma'am for giving us this opportunity to showcase to share the knowledge to our juniors. So we'll be happy and we hope that our relationship with KCG as alumni continues forever. Thank you so
It's
much for this.
always, nobody can change it, Naveen.
Yeah, thank you.
Femina, ma'am, you want to share some words?
Yes, of course, it was
Uh,
very nice session and both of you did a very good job.
hope
Thank
it
you,
was
ma'am.
not boring.
No, 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 it was informative only. I think the students also would have taken a bit of knowledge about wind. Okay,
Okay.
so I'll just formally propose the vote of thanks. Anything else you want to share and any participants want to ask any questions? Gautam sir, any
The,
other questions are there?
there is one question, I suppose, ma'am. What is the
Okay.
difference between cup and propeller anemometer from a student?
Shubha,
Subha,
Um,
your
Just
any
to
idea?
explain
Cup
reality.
and
yes, we can go to the slide, Naveen, again. We can just show them both the anemometers.
yeah, yeah,
So as you can see, the one is the cup anemometer and the propeller type of anemometers. I don't think there is much of a difference. This is basic. Both of them are mounted on the trail vane. This is actually the propeller is actually mounted on the trail vanes, as you can see, and it definitely has a rotating shaft below. So
and I
the
can add one
yeah
point to this.
yeah.
Like, if you compare the propeller and the cup anemometer is more reliable. So, if in a particular medmast, if you have both the propeller as well as the cup anemometer, they will ask us to consider the cup anemometer because it predicts and it measures the wind speed more accurately than the propeller anemometer.
Okay.
Okay, participants, please do see the chat box for the feedback form. Okay, so before you wind up or go out, please do fill the feedback form. Okay, thank you guys. Thanks for the presentation.
Thank
So I
you.
like, so I'll just like to add a few words. First of all, I'd like to thank the management for granting us permission to arrange this webinar. And I would like to thank the speakers, our alumni, Ms. Shubha Devi and Mr. S. Naveen Kumar for spending your valuable time in giving this webinar. Definitely, our participants, our students would have gained some knowledge. Okay. And I'd like to thank our Dean Ma'am, Dr. P. Devasundari, and our HOD Ma'am for supporting us. Special thanks to Mr. Pawan Sir and Nibin Sir. And thanks to all the participants. Once again, thank you one and all.